Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Monday, August 29th, 2022. And taking a look at across the country, if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide in this broadcast, you can always go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. If you point and click on the map, it'll bring up the forecast as well as any relevant watches, warnings, or advisories for anywhere in the country. A good way to check up on the weather for friends and family. And looking on the map this Monday afternoon, we have a couple of severe thunderstorm watches, eastern lower Michigan, northwest Ohio, back across Indiana and Illinois. Flood watches in West Texas, Big Bend area on up southeast New Mexico. And then further west, we have heat advisories in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Idaho, parts of Oregon. And then further south across California, we have excessive heat warnings and excessive heat watches that'll be impacting the weather there as the heat rebuilds over the interior west here this week. Here in Alaska, water levels remain high on the Kobuk, Koyukuk, and Noatak river basins as a result of some heavier rainfall. As much as 2 to 5 inches of rain fell last week into the early weekend. And we have another strong front going to bring another 1 inch plus of rainfall to the western interior. So as a result, we expect these river levels to stay high here in the week ahead. So be careful if doing any recreating, fishing, rafting, that sort of thing on any of these river systems. Also, we expect elevated surf along the west coast Tuesday into Wednesday as a result of this stronger occluded front that'll be increasing winds out of the southwest and west here Tuesday into Wednesday. Now we've had some fog this Monday morning around Anchorage and Fairbanks, and there's the potential for some fog redeveloping later tonight, early Tuesday morning, especially south central areas and parts of the interior. But as that western front pushes further east, it will help increase southeast to south gap winds along the east central Alaska range. So we do expect areas like Isabel Pass could see some wind gusts 40-50 miles an hour coming up here Tuesday night into Wednesday as that system works its way inland. And then yet by the later this week into the early weekend, we expect heavy rainfall possible along areas of the Gulf Coast Thursday through Saturday, the eastern Kenai through areas of Prince William Sound eastward through Yakutat all the way down to just along the coast there at Sitka. So looking at some of the FAA webcams this afternoon, picked up a light rainbow there at Dead Horse with temperature of 40 degrees, low cloudiness, and at least some finer raindrops falling there through the clouds and beneath that cloud deck. Koyuk had mostly cloudy skies, 47, but you are going to see winds picking up first from the southeast and south, shifting to the southwest and west later on Tuesday and into Wednesday, and that's what's going to cause those higher surf. So keep that in mind. Merrill Field, finally the lower cloud cover breaking up after we had a fair amount of fog around the Anchorage area this morning. Temperatures will be climbing up above 60 degrees in the late afternoon. Misty Fjords in the southern portion of the Panhandle living up to its name. Cloudy skies with rain and fog, a temperature at 60 degrees. So on the hazardous weather map, no advisories, watches, or warnings currently in effect. I just put in a couple of the special weather statements, the one to account for the higher river levels there in the interior west, and then for the potential for high surf or elevated surf there along western southern parts of the Seward Peninsula, including Nome, rounding around Norton Sound and then coming down to the lower Yukon Delta. And that would be Tuesday into Wednesday once that frontal system pushes across the region and causes that wind shift. I should say, on Saturday was the new moon, and we had a modest coronal mass ejection arrive yesterday evening that did trigger an active aurora display last night. It was visible from Fairbanks, where there were clear to partly cloudy skies for a time before the lower clouds and fog formed. And we have the full harvest moon coming up Saturday, September 10th. So maybe here in the next week, we have enough solar activity to get some additional active aurora displays where skies are clear. But that's the big question, where skies will be clear, because it's been cloudy and wet across much of the state, especially Gulf Coast, south central areas have been socked in quite a bit. Satellite imagery shows that moisture feed coming up across Haida Gwaii into the southern panhandle. Still curl in the clouds, weak low pressure over the Gulf, but more importantly, as we look to the west, we see that brighter cloud band swirl in the clouds, stronger low pressure deepening along the Russian coast there. And as it works, its frontal system works its way eastward, it's going to occlude and then push inland across the Seward Peninsula and into the southwest interior. So this afternoon, weak low there in the western Gulf, but there's that low along the Russian coast. Warm front pushes east, but gets occluded, and that front will bring in a band of rain and breezy conditions as we go through late tonight and early on Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the front will begin to push inland there into the Seward Peninsula and into the southwest interior through the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim basins, bringing rain and a wind shift going from the southeast and south to the southwest and west, and that's what will lead to some elevated surf along areas of the west coast here as we go through Tuesday and on Wednesday. We can see that low sitting there just southwest of St. Lawrence Island. A new secondary low, kind of triple point low, spins up there near Kodiak Island, the entrance of Cook Inlet, and that's going to bring additional moisture and rain that's going to help enhance the rainfall along the Gulf Coast there for Thursday through Saturday, with the heaviest rainfall likely along the eastern Kenai, areas surrounding Prince William Sound, eastward through Yakutat, and even as far south as Sitka. Low temperatures Tuesday morning will be in the 50s in the Panhandle, upper 40s, lower 50s across south central areas, generally around and above 50 at the coast. With a little bit of sun Tuesday afternoon, still could see some readings in the 60s, southern Panhandle, and also south central areas, Anchorage on up toward Talkeetna and Glen Allen. And then Wednesday morning lows generally in the lower mid-50s in the Panhandle, and right around 50, give or take a degree or two for south central areas. With Wednesday afternoon, we expect it a bit cooler with more cloud cover and some rain there across areas of south central, but the southern Panhandle could actually enjoy a little lapse there, allowing for temperatures to warm back up mid to upper 60s. Along the Yukon Valley, lows generally near just above 40 degrees Tuesday morning, mid-upper 30s along the Arctic coast. Still could see some 60s, 66 forecast high Tuesday at Fairbanks, lower 60s along the Elkan border. Generally 40s to near 50 degrees as we go north slope on over into the Seward Peninsula. Wednesday morning lows still generally mid-upper 30s along the Arctic coast, 40s elsewhere, pretty common. And then afternoon highs, still 60s east central areas, including Yukon Flats and going up the Tanana Valley, but along the northwest coast in the Seward Peninsula, high temperatures around or just above 50 degrees. Across the southwest interior and the Aleutians, lows will generally be in the 40s, though they could be closer to 50, especially once you get toward the central Aleutians. And then Tuesday afternoon, temperatures generally in the 50s with that front pushing inland with the band of rain and breezy conditions. Look for the wind shift southeast to south, shifting to the southwest and west. Temperatures Wednesday morning will be down into the 40s across the region, a little warmer, lower 50s along the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and then Wednesday afternoon with the cloud cover and that west-southwest wind off of the Bering Sea, temperatures generally in the 50s as you ride up there through the southwest interior. So the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, September 4th through the 8th. Temperatures are expected to average above normal, east central areas around Fairbanks up to Arctic Village, Northway, and perhaps in the northern part of the Panhandle. Little below normal once you get west of Sand Point toward Dutch Harbor on Alaska. And then precipitation is expected to average above normal the east side of the mainland, including areas north central and northeastern Gulf Coast and much of the Panhandle. But a little drier conditions, or at least below normal precipitation, is anticipated across the southwest coast down through portions of the Alaska Peninsula. And as I mentioned, we are looking for the potential for some heavier rainfall along the Gulf Coast coming up this Thursday through Saturday, as another low pressure system flings a pretty good round of moisture up into those areas.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time to look at your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned Tuesday or on Wednesday, the main weather feature will be a low pressure, stronger area of low pressure sitting along and off the Russian coast in the Gulf of Anadyr. And arcing ahead of that will be an occluded front that pushes in across the Seward Peninsula into the southwest interior and through central portions of the Alaska Peninsula. This will be accompanied by mainly a band of rain and wind-driven rain, as some rather breezy conditions are expected along areas of the Gulf Coast, along with enhanced higher surf. Could be a rumble of thunder, isolated lightning strikes there in the northeastern Gulf Coast. Otherwise, widespread IFR conditions Tuesday morning there through the Panhandle and much of the Gulf, as well as along the spine of the Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic Coast, and then back out from the Bering Strait down across St. Lawrence, Nunavik Island, all the way through much of the eastern, back through western Aleutians. Tuesday afternoon, now we see IFR conditions lift to MVFR across a good portion of the Panhandle and areas of the interior and south central. However, back toward the west coast, widespread IFR conditions along the west coast, parts of the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, pressing into the southwest interior, and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula all the way out through the Aleutian chain. Wednesday morning, we expect even more in the way of IFR conditions extending from all the way up north along the Arctic coast down through the North Slope, central Yukon Valley, western half of the Alaska Range, Cook Inlet, and entire southwest interior, back up through Norton Sound, west towards St. Lawrence, and then extending down through the eastern into the central Aleutians. And Wednesday afternoon, more of the same, even broader areas of IFR conditions anticipated along the south side of the Brooks Range, down through the central and lower Yukon Valley, western half of the Alaska Range, western Gulf, areas surrounding Cook Inlet, including the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula. So it'll be rather widespread. Anaktuvik Pass will see IFR conditions Tuesday morning becoming MVFR. Adigan Pass IFR early becoming MVFR. Further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill along the west arm of the Alaska Range, generally MVFR conditions expected Tuesday, as will Rainy Pass. Further northward, Windy Pass will start out with IFR conditions, giving way to MVFR. And a little further east, Isabel, generally MVFR conditions for Tuesday. And as we get toward Metasta, more of the same MVFR conditions are generally anticipated to hold there, though as you fly north of the north entrance, a better chance of some VFR conditions. A little further south and west, Tanita Pass MVFR on Tuesday, and Portage, a bit of a split. IFR conditions there through Prince William Sound along the east entrance, giving way to MVFR conditions in the afternoon. West side, MVFR giving way to VFR as the day progresses. And then finally, in the north end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White will start out IFR, giving way to MVFR for Tuesday afternoon. However, IFR conditions will likely return Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. Freezing levels are lowest along the northwest coast, north side of the Seward Peninsula, down around and below 4,000 feet. We see freezing levels as high as 10,000 feet along the south end of the Panhandle, and then above 12,000 feet from just west of the eastern through the central Aleutian chain. And the greatest threat for icing, moderate icing expected along areas of the Russian coast through the Bering Strait, associated with that occluded front that's arcing ahead of that low, pushing into the lower YK deltas, and then finally the southeast corner there of the Bering Sea to above 14,000 feet. Areas of the interior could see some isolated icing, generally well above 7,000 feet, and then a pocket of some moderate icing possible there. Far southeast Panhandle there around Hyder and in through parts of the interior mountains there, British Columbia above 10,000 feet. Jet stream level winds strongest 140 knot southwest max coming in across the central Panhandle, and then a broad area of 100 to 140 knot winds along and north there of the Aleutian chain in the lower Bering, bringing that down to 9,000 feet, 700 millibars. Broad area of winds generally 40 to 70 knots across the Bering Sea, and then at 3,000 feet, the low pressure continues to sit there along the eastern Russian coast with a broad area of 40 to 50 knot west-northwesterly winds across much of the Bering Sea, turning out ahead of that front upwards to 40 knots there, pushing into west sides of the state. Widespread moderate turbulence there along western areas of the state, including back towards St. Paul, St. Matthew, and all of the Aleutian chain, with a little pocket there in the southeast, surface to 6,000 feet.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining us again, talking about the Augmented Reality Sandbox, is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. And he's actually talking about a project from AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. A lot of acronyms, but some really fun stuff today, right, Eric?
You bet. We've got a learning tool that is a tool that's fun to use, and it really has a relevance to actually daily lives of anyone who goes outside and sees lumpy topography in Alaska. We've got a lot of mountains and such. You know, when I was younger and go on your first hike in the hills, say, you're given, maybe you're in the Boy Scouts or you get at the kiosk at the trailhead, a topographic map, a flat piece of paper with all these lines on it, bullseyes, long lines that curve back on themselves, say, perhaps things that look like this. A quadrangle or a topographic map. We've got here just to illustrate a couple of examples near Denali. Alaska has so much topography, so many mountains. And what are all these lines that we see? It can be tough to know what this means the first time you look at it. What we've got, all these lines represent lines of where the elevation of the topography goes through a certain level above sea level, say that this line represents where the mountains have gone from below 1,000 feet, mean sea level, up through 1,000 feet and above. That's your 1,000-foot contour. And when the mountain keeps going up, you're up to 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet, and so on. And that's how you get this little bullseye around the peak of a mountain.
Kind of makes layered slices, right?
Kind of like layered slices. Nice way to look at that. And when you see the lines are closer together, you're going up more steeply. If the mountain rises more slowly, it takes you longer in horizontal space to go through those different vertical increments. So
that is really hard to visualize.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a 2D piece of paper, two-dimensional piece of paper, but you're trying to understand what the three-dimensional world looks like. Well, enter the augmented reality sandbox. Yes, what is that? It is right here. We have the sandbox with us today, Sandbox 2.0, portable version.
Sweet.
Built up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we've got a couple of folks helping out today.
Let's see, Alana Valaji, and she's a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. If you want to give us a thumbs up there, Alana, thanks for helping us out today. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator from AKwx, also helping us out today. Thanks, Courtney.
And this tool here has a Microsoft Kinect to sense the level of sand in this sandbox. And then the Kinect feeds its information into a computer that then sends a signal to a projector to draw the appropriate topographic lines on this topography. The fun thing about this, as we can see here, is that the sandbox and its Kinect and its projector, they all work as a team. So here we've got a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. What if we took down the mountain to some degree? Watch as the software responds and redraws the topography.
Kind of a caldera forming there.
There you go, yeah. And what's fun about the sandbox too is it knows that gravity flows downhill, and we've got some water that's actually down in the lowest elevations. And what's happening now is we're making it rain a little bit. We'll fill up rain into that elevated lake bed, that caldera, as you said. And so now water is pooled up there. And what if you gouged out an outlet channel?
Glacial dam release.
There you go. The water flows out. What we're seeing here is a tool that allows people to touch and connect, Microsoft Connect, RRR, to connect two-dimensional topographic maps like what we have here, these flat things on a piece of paper, to the real three-dimensional world. I think this Sandbox's real particular application as a learning tool to young people is, what does a two-dimensional map mean when it's trying to represent the three-dimensional world? This sandbox is kind of both at once. It's actually three-dimensional, lumpy topography there, the sand, but it's got these lines drawn on the three-dimensional sand that would be on a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Wow, that is a huge leap from the learning that we experienced when we were younger to how children and even adults are visualizing in these new forms of technology. It allows that to kind of reshape their thinking and visualize this in a very useful and absolutely hands-on way. It's amazing.
It's a hands-on tool. And
it's hard for me to sit here and not go play with that.
Well, that's what happened at GINA, up at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, when the first model was being made, the prototype with plywood and such. We had professional adult professor types had heard about this, and they came by because they wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
And everyone becomes that idealistic, wonder-filled youngster.
Sure.
And you just can't help but play with that and to see how it reacts in time, and it's a dynamic learning tool, and it responds.
That's exactly the word.
And you wonder what applicabilities beyond a teaching tool for topography can it have. You can see how in Alaska we have inundation mapping is an issue. If you had water slosh inland, say in a coastal flooding event on the western coast of Alaska or the Arctic coast, you could see this. The concept is illustrated here as an introductory learning method. I think this is a potentially good outreach tool for all of us in Alaska.
Okay, so not only just a topographical sense, a mapping sense, maybe something that leads into understanding of how geographic information systems work with GIS, but also geology, if we wanted to get into kind of the formations and the bigger land masses and the representation of the 2D map. We could go into hydrology, which is very important in Alaska, of course. And even just understanding weather sense. Mounding up a big pile of sand could be that Arctic high pressure system sitting on top of Fairbanks, and the voids would be low pressure systems. This can go a lot of different directions.
Yes, exactly. It's not just landforms, but pressure has contours of high pressure and low pressure. And I wish I had had this kind of a learning tool when I was taking Meteorology 101 back 25 years ago.
Wow.
Would have been helpful, I think.
Probably would have gotten a better grade, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, Eric, and Alana and Courtney, thank you so much for your help there in the sandbox. We are going to play in the sandbox a little bit more coming up tomorrow on our next edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We hope you join us for that. In the meantime, make sure you go to alaska.edu/EPSCOR. That's alaska.edu EPSCOR to learn more information about what we're doing with this augmented reality sandbox around Alaska. We'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and let's check the sea ice edge for today before we get into the marine forecast. We continue to have the late summer melt-off across the Arctic coast. There's still some ice lingering there along the Russian coast, but otherwise it's what we'd expect now as we begin to enter the month of September. And as I mentioned, in another 3-4 weeks, we'll actually be potentially at that point where we could start making some new ice here as we approach October. Well, across the southeast panhandle on Tuesday, winds will be out of the southeast to south, 15 to 20 knots, some higher waves down there. Dixon entrance, perhaps upwards of 6 to 10 feet, otherwise 3 to 4 feet through the inner channels. Outer channels of the Gulf, outer Gulf coast, 15 to 20 knot winds out of the south-southeast with waves generally 5 to 6 feet. For Wednesday, winds will be northwesterly 10 knots with 2-foot waves there around Ketchikan, Metlakatla, but southeasterly 10 to 20 knots up through north of Petersburg, through Lynn Canal, where waves could be as high as 3 to 4 feet. Look for more of a mixed bag of winds along the outer panhandle coast, variable 5 to 10 knots, waves generally 5 feet. South-southeast winds, Yakutat westward at 15 to 20 knots and waves 5 feet. Across the northwestern Gulf, in Prince William Sound, northeasterly winds 10 knots, waves 2 feet. Off of the Kenai, northeast winds 15 knots, waves 5 feet. And then as entrance of Cook Inlet, southeast winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet before turning more southerly with waves of 5 to 6 feet through mid and upper Cook Inlet around Kenai. And then for Wednesday, winds will be out of the southeast, Prince William Sound, 20 knots, waves 3 feet. And across much of the region, look for southeasterly winds 20 to 25 knots off the Kenai and in through the entrance of Cook Inlet with waves 5 to 6 feet. Across Kodiak Island on Tuesday, variable to southwesterly winds 15 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet. As we extend out across the Alaska Peninsula, westerly winds to southwesterly winds at 20 to 25 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side, 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side. And then across the region, look for more widespread southwesterly winds 25 knots, especially extending out along the Alaska Peninsula on Wednesday, with waves of 7 to 8 feet on the North Pacific side and 8 to 10 feet on the Bering side. The occluded front is going to brush through just north of the Aleutians here on Tuesday. Winds will generally be southwest 25 to 30 knots across much of the region, 7 to 8 foot waves on the North Pacific side and 8 to 10 feet on the Bering side. And for Wednesday, winds turn a little more westerly, generally 20-25 knots, waves 7 to 8 feet on the North Pacific side, and 9 to 11 feet on the Bering side of the Aleutians. The front will be approaching the southwest coast and pushing inland later on Tuesday, so winds will shift southwesterly behind it, anywhere from 25 to as high as 35 knots. Waves running as much as 11 to 14 feet south of St. Lawrence Island through St. Matthew, and generally 7 to 9 feet south of Nunavik Island through St. Paul and St. George. Southeast winds to 30 knots ahead of the front there in Norton Sound. And then on Wednesday, winds continue generally with a south or southwesterly direction, 20 knots through Norton Sound, 25 to 30 knots off the southwest, off the YK deltas, and then especially back towards St. Paul and up through St. Matthew, with waves that way upwards of 10 to 13 feet. Along the Arctic coast, winds will be easterly 10 to 15 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet. As we come down through the lower Chukchi Sea, look for east to southeast winds increasing 25 to 30 knots, waves 6 to 8 feet. And then behind that occluded front, southwesterly 35 knot winds south of the Bering Strait, north of St. Lawrence Island, with waves of 10 to 11 feet. And on Wednesday, easterly winds 20 to 25 knots along the Arctic coast, waves 4 to 5 feet. And those easterly winds continuing down into the lower Chukchi Sea. We could see 30 knot winds off of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope with waves of 6 feet. And then southerly winds 20 knots on the north side of St. Lawrence Island with waves as high as 8 to 9 feet. Tuesday afternoon's weather map shows low pressure entering the Anadyr Bay, along with the occluded front extending eastward into the southwest interior. And that frontal system will press further east into the interior on Wednesday, with a secondary low spinning up there along the entrance of Cook Inlet, and that's going to enhance rainfall along the Gulf Coast here as we go Thursday through Saturday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.